Kyle here from All Media Reviews. Here to do 1980. A couple things just to announce quickly before I get into it. My belief is, at least to some degree, if not almost always, I'm gonna do these again. These are like rough drafts, and it's because there's just so many records that came out in certain years that I own in some cases that I don't know that well or haven't listened to in a long time and wasn't able to review again, or mean to and they should be in there or whatever, and it's just as overwhelming. And so I don't want to do a top 10 because top 10 to me doesn't reflect everything from that year. So it's sort of like a top 10. Really, a lot of these years, like the top 4 to 5 to 6 are more definitive. But so the intention is, and the hope, given time allows, of course, is to do most, if not every one of these years again, a little more thoroughly. And it may take a few years. I could be sitting here in 2026 or 2027 and still doing these again. So, but that's the fun of it, you know. That's the real acquisition for me is checking out and revisiting a lot of these albums that I either don't know or know vaguely. So, that being said, I'm going to do this, and I'll go over the ones that are not on the list first, like sort of unknowns, the rough draft, outside the rough draft even. I have another potential series or kind of unlimited series of videos I want to think I might make, thanks to seeing this new guy, or relatively new, Beer and Vinyl, Alex from Beer and Vinyl. He's going to be doing some new series where he's doing like 5 records, random records. I want to take my Rate Your Music account. There's like 3,000 albums on there approximately, give or take. Anything 3 stars or better or wish listed, I want to just like do reviews. Like one album, I'll do it on every video. I'll announce it, and then for the next video, that will be the album I'll do, and then I'll pick a new album to review. It could be a compilation, it could be a live album, it could be a single, it could be an EP. I think it would be interesting, and I'm not trying to bias genre or familiarity. It could be something I've listened to hundreds of times. It could be something I've listened to 2 times that I haven't listened to in 15 years. So I'll do another video on that soon, I think. Anyway, getting into 1980. So the stuff that's not on the 1980 list, even in the list, which a lot of the stuff at the bottom list I'm still not that familiar with. Billy Joel's Glass House, Motorhead's Ace of Spades. I know the song, of course. Elvis Costello's Get Happy, Dire Straits making movies, Pete Townshend's Empty Glass. That's considered, I guess, his most successful, most popular solo record. The Buggles, The Age of Plastic. Of course, everyone knows that Video Killed the Radio Star, but the record itself I'm not that familiar with. Japan, you know, Richard Barbieri would later go on to be in Porcupine Tree, his band, and then David Sylvian. Their album Gentlemen Take Polaroids. I don't know, it's like the debut album or whatever, but Anthony Phillips, Private Parts and Pieces 2, Back to the Pavilion. He's got tons of solo records, but I need to hear more than just the Geese and the Goose or whatever, of the best of his stuff. I really like him as a musician, as a composer. Daryl Hall's Sacred Song, that's the album I believe with Robert Fripp. Zap, which big influence on like Mayer Hawthorne and funk, and it's an album I need to hear more of. And another album from some band called Touch. It's just going through the 1980 list. Blue Oyster Cult's Cultosaurus Erectus. I need to hear like the early Blue Oyster Cult especially, but even this record, it's got a cool cover. I think that's the album that has Burning for You. There's one after that. But and then Squeeze's Argy Bargy, which I guess is the most successful Squeeze album, though it's not the album that has Tempted. But anyway, so now going to the list proper. Bruford's Gradually Going Tornado, number 28. Can't say a lot about it. I remember checking out from the library years ago. Bruford, I'm sort of souring. As much as I love him with the bands he's in, his solo stuff isn't my speed as much. I have this album lower, and I think it probably belongs higher, so when I do this in how many years or whenever it is. John Lennon and Yoko Ono's Double Fantasy. That's considered the best later John Lennon album. It's got that, the opening track I was just listening to earlier, that I've definitely heard many times. it's a lot of Yoko songs, I guess, on this, and that's kind of the criticism. Although some people say that the Yoko songs are better. John Lennon reminds people more of McCartney. Just like Starting Over, yeah. It's kind of ironic because it was like only a matter of months before he passed away when this came out. It was like right after, I forget. Number 27, number 26, Steve Ackett's Defector. Again, listened to it many years ago, and I can't talk about it, unfortunately. So I have this one, a physical copy, at number 26, or number 25, rather. Gary Livgren's, after he departed Kansas, and I don't know if he's completely like a born again. I don't know how Christian this really is. It does have Ronnie James Dio, though, and I listened to this when I bought this, and then I haven't listened to it, but it's on Mask of the Great Deceiver, and you have Steve Walsh, so some really good singers on this. I remember thinking I would like it more than I did, but this was probably 10 years ago when I listened to it. 2012 is when I got this, so anyway. Oh, so that could be moving up on down the road here. Number 25. Number 24, Prince's Dirty Mind. It's got a couple tracks that are okay. Unfortunately, it doesn't have as many notable like Prince pieces that and it's a lot of his albums. While he was prolific or not very long, he was just so in love with sort of that high reverb, the falsetto vocals. You know, the title track, "Do It All Night," "Uptown," I like, but it's just very reverby and very falsetto still. You know, he was just kind of still finding himself, in my opinion. He wrote some good music, but the production is one thing that kind of kills some of that early Prince for me, unfortunately. So anyway, number 25, number 24, number 23, Black Sea from XTC, which has Towers of London. I don't have a physical copy. It's another record that I probably should spend more time with. You know, getting to the point, get to the more peak XTC. I do have copies of some of their other records coming soon after that. Not all of them. Number 22, Split Enz True Colors. Well, I just listened to it for the first time last week. I like it. I think I like the previous record more, and I'm still kind of... I mean, yeah, the two guys from Split Enz, the guys ended up forming Crowded House, and they had some massive hits in the 80s. I think, you know, I mean, they're a work in progress at best for me. I thought I was probably going to like them more. I still think I haven't heard enough of their music to fully know how I feel, but number 22, this is considered their commercial peak. I forget what track it was that's on this. I can't really, let's just see here really quickly. I Got You, I think it was. I Wouldn't Dream of It. Nobody Takes Me Seriously, and The Coral Sea. I mean, yeah, again, I'm struggling with a little bit of the lead vocals. If the lead vocals were better, I probably would like them more. But anyway, number 22. Number 21, U2's debut album, Boy, which has I Will Follow. I listened to this years ago when I got into U2, and I still favor the later U2. I know a lot of the hardcores love the first couple of U2 records, but they'll be showing up, they'll be showing up higher on some of my lists later in the 80s, but not so much on this record. But it's a record that I need to revisit, some of these records. That goes along with David Bowie's Scary Monsters and Super Creeps. A friend of mine burned me all these David Bowie albums years ago, and I remember liking this, and the title track I liked, but it was very nondescript. It was pretty... I don't think there were any real bangers on it. No, like, radio hits that found its way onto this particular record. Number 19, I don't have it as 60 because I moved it. I gotta, like, alter this. Weather Report's Night Passage, which Alfonso Johnson, this is after Jocko had left and he came back, I think. Unless it was Victor Bailey. But it's kind of leaning toward that sort of 80s, not elevator jazz, but, you know, where Weather Report would go, and then the criticism was more valid. Their 70s stuff, even though a lot of this is live, like most of it is, I guess, but which they are generally a better live band anyway. But I was just getting a very 80s sheen to it. With this is 1980, but you know, probably recorded some of it in 79. Number 18, Talking Heads' most famous record, Remain in Light, which that again, like the Split Enz record, True Colors, I'd never listened to in full. It has that song, Once in a Lifetime. It's best known, you know, where David Byrne's asking the question. You know, you may ask yourself, you know, how did I get here? But And it has Adrian Belew, and he plays the lead guitar, and vocally Adrian Belew sounds a fair amount like David Byrne, but I don't know how much vocals he actually does on this. I actually think I like the previous two records more. I wasn't blown away by it. I was maybe after being kind of blown away by Fear of Music and more songs about buildings and food. I think I was just waiting to find those. I mean, Once in a Lifetime, of course, I know. I mean, if I saw a copy of it on vinyl for a reasonable price, I would buy it. It's the #1 album in 1980 on Rate Your Music. So, Born Under Punches. I mean, this is even the one that I was looking. This is the remaster. I just felt like, it's okay. That I felt like there was more raw, sort of impressive, sort of engaging energy on the other two records. But anyway, I've never listened to David Byrne's solo music either, unfortunately, admittedly. So that's number 8. That's number 18. Yes. So number 17. I'm not getting off here with the numbers. Queen, The Game, which of course is known best for Another One Bites the Dust and Crazy Little Thing Called Love. I like some of this. I definitely feel like Queen was starting to dip like a lot of these bands. Dragon Attack is interesting. Play the Game. Again, this like the Weather Report. There's an 80s production that's sort of not necessarily for the better. But it's okay. I mean, Freddie's performance is still very good. I've heard Another One Bites the Dust a million times, so I don't love it like maybe I did when I first heard it many years back, like decades ago. So anyway, that's why I didn't finish quite as high. That's number, if I'm counting correctly here, number 17. Number 16, Steely Dan's Gaucho, which is like the last, if I'm not mistaken, I think it might be the last sort of proper Steely Dan album. And I didn't get a chance to revisit it in full, so I'm guilty of that. I know a couple of the tracks that are on it, like Babylon Sisters and Hey 19, of course. But my initial impression is it's still good. There's still like memorable moments on it, but it's not as quote unquote classic. It doesn't have as many bangers. But I know people love Gaucho, but just some of the records are just so good that it just kind of goes down the list by default. So that's number 16. Number 15, Van Halen shows up again with Women and Children First. And the Cradle of Rock and Everybody Wants Them, I think of this most for. Yeah, again, party rock, Everybody Wants Them, I always think of for the scene in One Crazy Summer, or no, is it Better Off Dead? One of them, the animation. I think it was Better Off Dead, actually, but it's good. Again, with Van Halen, I find that I know the radio hits, and the deeper tracks are very hit and miss, and there aren't too many. Tora Tora, Take Your Whiskey Home, Could This Be Magic, Still very guitar-oriented. They weren't using a lot of keyboards still at this point, of course, which I tend to actually lean towards some of the Van Halen with the keyboards. That was number 16, yes. Number 15, rather. I'm counting correctly. So number 14, I haven't listened to this album in a long time, but I did revisit the title track earlier today. Mike Rutherford's Small Creeps Day. I remember they talked about this. They did a whole episode on the Tabletop Genesis. It made me want to listen to it more. The title track is quite good, though it sounds a fair amount like Duke, which is just sort of obvious that they came out the same year. The singer, I guess he had sang with Manfred Mann. Pull this out or anything. I was looking it up, but and actually the guy who plays the keyboards is not Tony Banks. It's not really a notable keyboard player, but of all people, Anthony Phillips. I mean, it's not weird to find that he would want to play on one of Mike's albums, but Simon Phillips is the drummer. Morris Pert. The singer's name is Noel McCullough, but I guess he had been with Manfred Mann. But yeah. I mean, the guitar work is nice. It's prog. I mean, the suite especially, the 24-minute suite. You kind of think between that and the Duke suite in 1980, Rutherford was kind of hitting his stride with writing, epic pieces. But anyway, I probably would rate it higher if I was more attached to it. But I mean, it's always an album. I remember liking it when I like it more than the Mike and the Mechanic stuff. But then again, I don't know their full albums as well. So that was number 14. Number 13, Bruce Springsteen and the River, the double album. One of a couple double albums on my list here. This has a few pop bangers people know it for. Hungry Heart, the title track. Those are the biggest ones. But my favorite track on here, Out in the Streets, another one. That's not. But my favorite track on here has been for the longest time the 3 minute and 4 second track, Jackson Cage on the first disc or whatever. I love the flow of that. I don't know. It's about like someone in a prison. I don't know, but it's the energy is awesome on that track. It's like Candy's Room. It's probably my fourth favorite Springsteen song actually, behind Candy's Room and Jungle Land and like Thunder Road. Ties That Bind, Point Blank is nice, Cadillac Ranch, Fade Away. It's a good record. I would say it's better than some of his records, but yeah, I mean between this is the follow up from Darkness on the Edge of Town. I would still probably lean toward Darkness a little bit because it is a double and it's a little longer, and he didn't fully accomplish the Zeppelin double album. More is more, but anyway. I need to get it on vinyl, of course. I don't think I have it on vinyl. Now it's number 13. Number 12, so we see Queen again, and this some people would consider this kind of sacrilege that I would put this above The Game, which had one of their biggest hits of all time, No One Bites Dust, the John Deacon pen track, funky. But I have a soft spot in nostalgia, as cheesy as it is, for the Flash Gordon soundtrack. I caught this when I was a kid and also in the 90s on TV, and I was like, hey, that's Queen, and I mean, there's a lot of snippets from the movie. It's kind of like listening to the movie in some ways, but the Flash Gordon theme alone is just pure, like, unapologetic, epic cheese, and it works. It's a product of its time, that movie, but it's one of my favorite soundtracks. So anyway, that's number 10, number 12 rather. Okay, number 11. Yes shows. So, of course, Yes hadn't put on an official live album since Yes Songs way back when Bruford and then Ellen White joined in 73, I think it was, or 70. Anyway, it'd been a few years, and of course they took the hiatus. And this has a lot of the relayer stuff, and it has Mraz. It doesn't translate quite as well live as the stuff on Yes Songs, which they go into new places. But for the set list alone, it has The Gates of Delirium, it has Ritual Part 1 and Wondrous Stories. I mean, I appreciate it still, but I don't revisit it. I would still lean toward Yes Songs when listening to a live Yes album, but it's one of the best albums of the live albums of the 80s for sure. And, being a fan of The Gates of Delirium so much, you kind of have to appreciate it to some degree, even if it's not as good. I know they did like tons of versions of it later. I have to put these out off the side with, Tom Brislin and Igor and the orchestra, and I never saw it. It's just terrible. My favorite Yes song I never got to see live. I've seen Yes 5 times live, John Anderson, but... So, number 10, Alan Parsons Project's The Turn of a Friendly Card. Very good record. Of course, it has his biggest, the Alan Parsons Project biggest hit in Games People Play. That's a classic rock and almost yacht rock staple. But this is a prog album. It has Time also, which is another pop song, which it's a ballad, but I have a nostalgia because I heard that song around the time when our dog was getting sick, and I think of, how much more time we had with Coco. So I always think of that song for some reason. I get nostalgic and get kind of sad. But it has like the title track suite, which is really great. When I saw him, it was about a year and a half ago. Unfortunately, he was going to do this, and he did, and he ended up doing Eye in the Sky instead. But I was really looking forward to the Snake Eyes, Nothing Left to Lose. It's the great mixture of pop and prog and sort of, accessible classic rock kind of stuff. So, I need to get a physical copy of this album. A few of the Alan, I have some of them, but I don't have this one. Especially just for Games People Play, I could go for getting the single of that. That's a pop song that's held up, and I have like a compilation. I always think of that compilation just for that song. So number 9, Ultravox's Vienna. Could totally attest that Jake Rude's show introduced me to Ultravox, even though I'd heard the name before that. Art rock. The title track is amazing. The first, 2 or 3 tracks, I bought this, and I thought, I was going to completely just be blown away by the whole album, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Which means it's good, but it's not a perfect record. It's not like, it would have finished higher probably. But what is it? Astrodyne and New Europeans. and then Western Promise. There's I love the use of piano, and they use piano and the dynamics with the piano. The stuff that sounds more like pure new wavy kind of synth stuff, I'm kind of hit and miss on, but still a very good record. And Ultravox, I'm completely guilty still, and that I need to hear a lot more of their music. It may ultimately not be my favorite Ultravox album, but the title track is just breathtaking. It's an absolute banger. It's one of the best songs of the 80s for sure, and definitely of 1980. So number 8, Peter Gabriel's Melt, the third Gabriel self-titled, which has one of my favorite Gabriel songs known for a long time, GameSpot Frontiers. It's a pop song, but you know the lyrics are weird. It's like in German or something like that. I believe he has a lot of different musicians on it, including Robert Fripp. Brian Eno, I believe, was involved in this, but there's a lot of really good songs on this, as much as a lot of them didn't find the radio. Biko, as much as it's known for this, it's one of the more known songs on this record. It's kind of slow, and I'm not that crazy about. I mean, it's okay, I guess, but I have to admit that after listening to the first 2 Gabriel albums and then listening to this and knowing like Security, some of his other records, this might be my favorite Gabriel record. Up has always been for the longest time, but this thing really doesn't have any songs I don't like, and I cannot say that about his other records. Family Snapshot and Through the Wire. Tony Levin's featured. Larry Fast, of course, is super featured in these early Gabriel records. Lead a Normal Life, Not One of Us. Some of it harkens back to the Genesis kind of stuff he was doing, but some of it is just, and it's not pure new wave. It's like Gabriel kind of reinventing and forming his own sound. And it's not super pop either. It's the right mixture, really. So, this is a record I enjoy, and I probably could enjoy even more over time. But so let's see. That's number 8. Number 7. Let's see. Here it is. I guess this is considered a double, which is weird. Al Di Meola's the 4th album on Columbia, the 4th solo album, and it even has Chick Corea on a track. It has a bunch of great guests, but it's a double album. Splendido Hotel. Kind of always felt like the first 4 Al Di Meola albums are like essential, although, I guess I would say that this album doesn't stand out quite as much as the other 3. But Electric Rendezvous, it's like there's stuff on Electric Rendezvous I might like more. There's stuff on this album I like more than Electric. But I guess I still hold true to that feeling that the first 4 Al Di Meolas are sort of required listings for jazz fusion on Columbia. But it has the Isfahan 11.5-minute piece, which I think it kind of is hit and miss. It doesn't flow perfectly. But Alien Chase on the Arabian Desert is nice. There's more of a Middle Eastern element in this than any of his other albums that I noticed. Al D's Dream Theme is fun. Dinner Music of the Gods. There's one track he sings on this, and I was just kind of like, what are you doing, Al? He's trying to write a pop song, I guess because maybe Stanley Clarke had a song that made like the top 40 or whatever, but I give him credit for trying something different, but Two to Tango is another one that's nice. Spanish Eyes. It's Al Di Meola. You really can't. Those first 4 albums, most of the music you can't go wrong with. And it's not identical. It's more in Middle Eastern, like I said. Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell, number 6. This is a fantastic record. Of course, it's the first album with Ronnie James Dio. In fact, and I'm not sure how many records that Ronnie James Dio actually was on, because he did Holy Diver not that long after this, but. Might be a one-off, but it's a terrific record, Heaven and Hell. The title track is one I've known. When he passed away in 2010, I was going on a binge, and I was just like, oh man, I've been sleeping on this guy. It's less metal and more, I wouldn't call it prog exactly, but more artsy, more fantasy. Let's see, where is it? I'm looking for what some of the other tracks, just because I don't have a physical copy. Children of the Sea, Lady Evil, Wishing Well, Die Young. Just the thing about listening to him sing and the vocal lines he wrote, he was just, it's worth the price of admission. A little bit like Freddie Mercury, a little bit like my favorite singers. I'll listen to them sing almost anything. It can hit and miss between whether the song's good, but he just wrote really good songs, and I think when with Ozzy Osbourne leaving, I think the band and he had something to prove. Neon Nights is another song this album's known for. It's very epic. It's like it reminds me more of the Rainbow stuff really than anything else. Of course, it was natural because that was right after he left Rainbow. So so that's number 6. All right, in the top 5. Number 5, The Police. Again, the run of consistency continued with Zenyatta Mondatta. Don't Stand So Close to Me, Driven to Tears, When the World is Running Down. That was like a COVID, like, anthem for a while. It's a long title, I'm not going to read it out. Canary in a Coal Mine, Voices in My Head, Do-Do-Do-Do. This is the album that has Do-Do-Do-Do, da-da-da. And then a favorite of my friend who loved The Police, and I still love this song, Man in a Suitcase. I guess you could say this album didn't have as many or any of their massive hits. Do-Do-Do-Do was pretty big. Don't Stand So Close to Me was relatively big, but it pales. But I don't know. I think this is almost the most iconic Police album, even more than Synchronicity. And I've come to almost feel like the Police are like Zeppelin or like Rush. Like their albums are very close, very close. Other than I'll say one of them. But so that's why it ends up in the top 5. I mean, it's a product of the year to an extent, and I haven't listened to a lot of these albums in 1980, maybe. So, all right, top 4. My favorite, and the one time you'll see Hawkwind on any of these lists at this point, the Ginger Baker included performance "Levitation" from Hawkwind. When I got into it was Yes and a few other bands, I was trading bootlegs, Rush bootlegs. Some guy gave me a few records. He gave me a couple Syd Barrett records on cassette. He gave me Grateful Dead's Tear Up in Station, and he gave me this. He gave me something from The Residents. And I was just floored by this. This is like epic space rock. It is a perfect record, beginning to end. Levitation, Motorway City. I mean, I probably should rate it higher than 4. Who's Gonna Win the War? I mean, the only real criticism about it is it doesn't have, like, any, like, really highly melodic songs, but you're not getting that with Hawkwind. You're getting the kind of the flow and the energy and the mood of this, and I feel like they combine that with sort of really great hard rock with some spacey, dreamy elements, and it just, the whole thing flows so well. Amorphous even covered the title track at one point, so, I mean, again, I've never found my way with Hawkwind, but this is the one exception. Levitation is awesome, and maybe Ginger Baker had something to do with it. Of course, Lemmy Kilmister was not on it. I mentioned the Motorhead record, but because that was a long time after he had left the band, I think. I think he left like in the early or mid 70s. So if I'm not skipping anything over, the top 3. Yeah, they got the top 3. So number 3, my favorite Phil Collins led Genesis album, Duke. The Duke Suite, even though it's not together, is epic, and Duke Travels is the best drum work of Phil Collins' career in my mind. I still like Misunderstanding, though it's a pop banger. Turn It On Again, Man of Our Times. I feel like Genesis finally came together. They kind of figured out how to combine progressive rock with their pop direction without going too far. And that echoes the statement of most people. This is the whole album's like a suite, really. It's terrific. I even like the artwork. I've got 2. This is one of a couple copies I got. So Duke at number 3. Number 2, I've said his praise many times, and you could flip-flop these. Rush's, Permanent Waves. Natural Science, a top 3 Rush song for me. It's prog rock at its best. It's perfectly composed, written prog rock without losing the whole, agenda, losing your way. I don't mind the radio song, Spirit of Radio and Free Will, as much as I kind of am not as crazy about some of the other radio songs, specifically from the next album, just because I've burnt out on them. I haven't burnt down as much on them. But also, Jacob's Ladder, Entre Nous, and Different Strings. Different Strings is just so great. It's an unbelievable ballad, especially when Dream Theater covered it. But Entre Nous, even though that's gotten some radio play, doesn't get enough. That people don't talk about that song a lot. I love that track. So this is basically Rush on their consecutive perfection streak, but in some ways their peak. In my mind, it almost was their. I mean, between Hemispheres and this, it's ironic how probably my top 2 Rush albums go back to back. So it came out like the first week of 1980. So next year we'll be celebrating 45 years. So number 1, we have the Yes guys. The departure of John Anderson and Rick Wakeman, but comes in the 2 Buggles guys, and they created one of the sort of almost like proto-prog metal. Fantastically heavy, progressive, 80s tinged, new wavy prog metal album. I mean, it's just Into the Lens is an all-time favorite of mine. I love Machine Messiah. It's epic. Trevor Horn's voice works so damn well on this, and Chris Squire was at its, it was a response maybe to the lackluster response they got from Tormato, and it works so well. And Tempest Fugit, Run Through the Light. I love everything on this album. I was a Yes fan for many years, and then heard it was like 2003, 2002, something like that. I'm like, why in the world didn't anyone tell me to listen to this album? Because it doesn't have Rick Wakeman, because it doesn't have John Anderson. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. And it's almost like this is like Relayer. It's like isolated on its own as, it's Yes, but Yes of a parallel universe. It's the same way you could say with Relayer, because it doesn't kind of resemble that classic Yes sound that you think of. But it kind of does, and it kind of reinvents it for the 80s. It was like a perfect storm, a perfect marriage. They found a way, just like Rush and like Hawkwind, they found a way to sort of combine a lot of the best elements of the music from the 70s with kind of bringing it into the 80s with technology without losing the way. I think with what they do going forward after this, and I mean, Trevor Horn was involved in the production, they kind of did lose their way in my mind, but they had one last piece in them, and it just so happened it had the guys from the Buggles. Of course, Jeff Downs would go on to Asia, and then of course he rejoined Yes, but decades later. But I love Drama. Drama, Permanent Waves, Duke. They're a mismatch. I love them all, almost all equally. But so that's 1980. I will go on to 1981, and again, my intention is to just rough draft this. I keep on coming up with album after album that I miss, and then album that I have to listen to again, and I just don't have the time. And if I want to get this done, if I want to get through this by, say, April, because it's going to be, I'll be doing this in summer. But thank you for watching. Please subscribe and give it a like. Give it a like. Please subscribe and ring the notification bell, and we'll see you next time.